Hi, cheese friends, and welcome back to another episode of Curtis the Word. I'm your host, Brittany, and today's cheese actually has a lot in common with myself. I didn't really realize that until, started doing some research for it, and we will get into it. So I just want to give you guys thank you for always supporting me. I did take some time off to support my family. I gave birth last year to a beautiful baby girl who is about to be 1. And yes, she is on her way to becoming quite the cheese snob. I take full pride in that. And without further ado, let's get into today's cheese. You know those cheeses that you don't really need to shout about? The ones that just exist, they're quiet, they're confident, you see them all over, and yet you wonder, where did this come from and why is it always here? I bring you today's cheese, Ossau Iraty. I personally picked this piece up from my local Whole Foods. Like I said, it's a very prevalent cheese. It's been around, rumor has it, since before the English alphabet. Maybe not this specific piece per se, but this style of cheese. Ossau Iraty is a sheep's milk cheese from the Basque region and the Béarn Valley in France. Both areas are incredibly green. Imagine rolling hills, just beautiful landscape, shepherds and sheep and wildflowers, just an absolutely picturesque place to be. Both of these are located in the French Pyrenees mountains. And as I mentioned, this cheese is potentially older than the English alphabet, and I'm not even really exaggerating. Shepherds, monks, and farmers have been using this cheese as a form of currency well before paper money or euros ever existed. I'm talking they would trade wheels of this cheese to pay their bills, pay their taxes, to keep their families alive and well. Unfortunately, that doesn't work today, but that would be very, very great for me and my family if I could trade all the cheese I had to pay my tax bills. This cheese is so old that there's another rumor, lots of rumors here swirling about this cheese because, kind of hard to find really well documented, whether it be the cheesemaking recipes or the types of people who made the cheese. That tends to be a constant theme in very original cheeses. But it comes to us from Greek mythology. And I know you can't spell mythology without the word myth, but this makes it a little fun story. That Ariste, who is the son of Apollo, who is the son of Zeus, so let's hop, skip, and jump. I guess that would make it Zeus's grandson. He was the first one to make this cheese. So in your Greek mythology books, Ossau Iraty may or may not have been there. Goes to show us this cheese is ancient. So next time you feel old, you just think about your good friend Ossau Iraty. Okay, sorry. Before I dive in, quite literally, we have all the goodies right here in front of us. I did post on my Instagram stories and I said, hey, you, respond to me and tell me what you think about Ossau Iraty. And I have to say, I was pleasantly shocked that so many of my cheesemonger friends mentioned that this is one of their favorite cheeses. Now, I didn't get too nitty gritty and ask, oh, is it because you like the flavor, the texture, or how do you like it? Or, hey, it's an easy sell. I like to call this the milder French version of manchego. So if you love manchego, I highly recommend giving this a try. It goes great on any kind of cheese board. It's easy to cook with, culinary. You can melt it. It makes, great melter. Really fun to, grate it, shred it over something, and soups, salads, you name it. Very versatile. So it gets a big round of applause from a lot of people, both in the industry and who just like to eat cheese for fun, like myself. Although I guess I'm in the industry, but whatever, you know what I mean. So let's talk about the cheese. This cheese, I said, was born in the Pyrenees Mountains from 2 different breeds of sheep. You have the Manec and you have the Basque Béarnese. Their milk is really sweet, it's rich, it's grassy. I know some pivot a bit, but there's a Portuguese sheep's milk cheese that I did in episode number 2, I think, maybe 3, called Ovelha Amanteigada. And it's very yeasty. It kind of has this beer-like flavor, and they say that's also because of the sheep's milk. But on the other hand, when we age the sheep's milk more, we're getting a different flavor profile, and that is A-okay, totally normal. Don't be like me and swear off sheep's milk cheese because you don't like one version of it. That is a bad habit I have. Okay, so with this cheese, the herders tend to practice transhumance, which is when they bring the sheep to the pasture for the season, and you can taste the different qualities of the land in the milk. In fact, this journey in France kicks off in June, and they have a little fete for it. There's a sheep's parade to say that the summer milk season is going to start. The summer milk for Ossau Iraty tends to be its prized possession. The award-winning cheeses tend to have the milk from the summer. It's got bits of wildflower, herbs. It really just becomes the heart of this cheese. And yeah, again, with transhumance, they basically go from low valley lands up to high mountain peaks. And yeah, it's a beautiful practice. They've been doing it for however long, since, Zeus's grandson was making the cheese. Maybe they were doing it then. And also, too, this is a natural rind cheese. So as you can see, this is what happens when the cheese is hanging out in the caves for a while. This cheese does age for a minimum of 90 days. It can be difficult to find out. I got this piece of cheese from Whole Foods. Full transparency here. However, I don't believe the people at Whole Foods are going to give me the exact number of months that this cheese has been aging for. So with that, we'll say minimum of 90 days, but it's an aged cheese, so take with that as you will. Even though it has a natural rind and it is it's a firmer cheese, it still has that bit of sheep's milk elasticity. So, when you have, let's say, a Pecorino Romano or an aged Gouda, instead of being able to bend it so much, it would crumble completely, just, But we like that. That's what we like it for. Or an aged English cheddar, same thing, crumbly, dry. But here you can see a little bit of cheese elastic and how it can actually bend a bit. So even though it's firmer, we'll say semi-firm, semi-soft, semi-firm, somewhere in the middle. More on this cheese. Another fun story in here is where I alluded to in the beginning that this cheese and I have a lot in common. The sheep who milk for his cheese actually go on maternity leave. I think that is so... I knew I wanted to do this cheese first because my main claim to fame is that I like to talk about fancy cheese for not so fancy people, and I like to decode the tough names, and Ossau Iraty doesn't tell you much when you see it at the deli counter. So I knew right away I wanted to start with this cheese. It's very popular, and then as I'm reading it, I feel like this was kind of a sign. So very special about Ossau Iraty. And again, I think we can all, whether or not you are giving birth or not, I think we can all take a little bit of a break, but if we maybe mentally, I don't know. Anyway, let me get back into the cheese. They take a seasonal milking break. So now they're going up to the pastures in June, they're getting milked, they're making cheese, and then come around like October-ish, they stop. The sheep will give birth. And they tend to their lambs for about 100 days or so, give or take, obviously. The number of sheep, there's no way of knowing for sure. And then around December, they pick back up again. And I think, the cows rest, the land is able to rest and regrow, it's not going to regrow in December, but gives it a break to come back for the spring season. I also wrote, while I'm not currently milking anyone anymore, I do like the idea of a break. You've worked so hard and you get to take a little bit of time off. We can all rest to reset a bit. However, if you work in the cheese industry, it is early November, so I do I guess when this comes out, it'll be mid-November. So I do apologize because there's really not much of that in Q4. So maybe in January, we can revert and try the best to reset again. But anyway, with this cheese, because this pause just kind of gives everyone a fresh sense of renewal. The milk comes back, the farmers and shepherds get a chance to relax. I said the land gets to rest. So when it's time to resume, everyone is really fresh-faced and ready to go, which is always really nice. So with that, each wheel of Ossau Iraty kind of carries a completely different season to it. There's winter milk, spring milk, summer milk, and each one has its own unique style. One day, cheese goal, I would love to be able to eat a piece of cheese and tell you, oh, this feels like fall milk or this feels like summer milk. So put that in my parking lot to-do list. But the great thing about that is with this cheese, it's really paying an homage. I'm laughing because I recently did a cheese event and I was using the word homage and someone was like, homage to fromage. Like, oh, you must use that all the time. And I actually don't. And I was like, oh my God, that's actually a great little cheesism, if you will. So this cheese pays homage to the land and the terroir. What is terroir? It is a French word that has no English counterpart. It basically is the natural landscape. Actually, according to Catherine Donnelly, who wrote the Oxford Companion to Cheese, which I would show you. However, my camera is currently propped up on it. I did bring it up here to use as a prop, but it works really great with my tripod. So sorry, Catherine. However, she writes that terroir is the total natural environment of any agricultural site. And so how does that equate to cheese? Well, if you think about the land, the sheep are, ingesting this grass from that. We are ingesting the milk from that sheep. So if 8th grade math serves me right, we are getting a taste of this land, and that would be the terroir. Other cheesemakers, not so much, can't confirm for Ossau Iraty, but I know in the US, people are getting very scientific and they're infiltrating the soil, treating it with different, things. I maybe will research that for a future episode, but that way they can actually kind of have a better control of what that grass is going to taste like, how that's going to grow, how the cow or goat or sheep is eating it, how the milk is changing. And that is a whole nother topic for another day. But I think that is truly some excellent science behind your cheese. To the green person in cheese, the consumer, if you will, sometimes you just eat a piece of cheese and you're just like, wow, this is good. Not knowing really how much work goes into that single piece of cheese. Whether it's, the cows wearing Fitbits to make sure they're getting enough exercise and making sure that their milk is okay because of that. Or, like I said, infiltrating the soil so the cheese can taste a certain way. There is so much more than meets the eye. And that's probably my second favorite thing about cheese. I think my first favorite thing is that all cheese is made of the same 4 category of ingredients. And they are all so, so vastly different. Okay, enough of my break about that. We'll get back into Ossau Iraty. So let's talk flavor. I'm going to cleanse my palate here. I will say too, before we really dive into this, sometimes Ossau Iraty offers a bit of a fishy scent. If your piece of Ossau Iraty has that, just let it sit for a bit. It tends to be, my piece from Whole Foods was wrapped in plastic, which as a cheese person, you know how plastic. I'm like, no, it's not going to breathe. We need cheese paper, Vermaticum bags, or Ovaltine wrap. Cheese is alive, so we got to let it breathe. So yeah, let it sit. It should be sitting anyway. Best temperature to eat cheese is at room temperature. So let's talk about the cheese. Also, I've been reading Mandy Naklick's book on tasting. She is a home brewer and kind of goes into this deep dive on how to really taste your food. And a lot of people, when they see either a glass of wine or a piece of cheese, they just immediately are like, oh, you smell X, Y, and Z. And I think we can break it down a little bit easier. She mentions doing a pyramid scent taste where you hold it, or I guess a triangle, you hold it down, you hold it out, you hold it under, but we never want to take one big gust of, smell in. We just kind of want to take a couple sniffs. To me, this is giving a little bit of sweet cream, a little bit of yogurt, definitely like butter, lactic dairy vibes to it. So let's try a piece. Oh my God, that is so good. I haven't had this cheese in a while. I also haven't yet had breakfast today. It is now 12:15 while I'm recording this. Wow. It really just coats your mouth with like almost like a warm sweater of cheese, but at the same time, that teensy little bit of yeast that I was talking about, or I should say complaining about earlier, kind of gives it like a little buzz. Like, I know I ate it because it's still kind of there, but not in an unpleasant way. It's definitely buttery. It's lactic. I'm getting a little bit of like toasted wheat bread. Maybe like a warm glass of milk before bed. Funny that I feel that way because I'm going to talk about how this cheese is also called the dessert cheese, but we'll get there. Okay. As I kind of go along, I'm getting more of the aftertaste coming through. I'm getting like some roasted nuts, almost a sweetness of a hazelnut, but not nearly as strong as that. Wow. Also, too, again, depending on the month of the milk or the season, I should say, some people report getting like oniony, in like a Gruyere kind of a vibe, or even like roasted vegetables, cashews, kind of more on that savory playing field. It was so good. As I mentioned before, Whole Foods is not going to tell me how many months this was aged. Although I guess I could ask. You know what? No hate. I could ask next time. But if you look, you'll see there are some little crystals in there. And those tiny little calcium crystals offer that kind of crunch that people love about aged Gouda. No, they're not salt. They are just kind of the result of what happens during aging when the carbon dioxide explodes. That's an incredibly high level and not scientific way of describing that. So I do apologize to those who prefer a more scientific story on that. I love them. I know there a lot of people, you know, want more aged cheese to have them. They are delicious. This is so good. I could literally just eat this. I get why mongers say this is one of their favorite cheeses because you can literally just eat this by itself. So good. This feels like a classic, just staple cheese. You want to just like always have it in your fridge. Surprise guests, boom, Ossau Iraty. Need a girl dinner, Ossau Iraty. Okay. As you see here, this is the fun part. How are we pairing this cheese? We like to call this the pairing playground, if you will. So let's have some fun. Okay, Ossau Iraty. It, like I said, goes with everything. You can cook with anything. Right off the bat, we're not doing that, but I'm getting this big, I want like a tomato soup with croutons and I want to just shave it all over it. That's where I'm feeling right now. Also, it's getting colder here. But let's talk about the actual cheese tasting and pairing right now. It can handle, let's see, wine tends to be a really popular option. Oh, look at that. Have some right here. Ossau Iraty is a milder cheese, so it can handle a more intense red, something a little more tannic. We have a 2019 Bordeaux that we will be sampling with this. Time out. If you have a vintage wine like I do, this is 2019. A good rule of thumb is to wait 5 minutes for every year difference for it to breathe. So we're in 2025. That's 6 years. That's 30 minutes for this wine to reach peak flavor, where it's not too intense, not too spicy, if you will. Sometimes if you just open a bottle of wine, take a sip right away, it's like, woof, let me just sprout a couple hairs on your chest. So if you want to really have the wine how it should be drank, 5 minutes per year difference from the vintage. Yes, I know I am the most impatient person, especially with wine. We do own a decanter for that reason, which I guess kind of cuts it in half. I don't know. I've drank wine straight from the bottle. Well, straight from opening the bottle. Although if you knew me in college, probably did. And I've also drank wine that's been left out for far too long. So one more time, general rule of thumb, 5 minutes per year. So it's been sitting out. And what I like to do when I taste a cheese with a wine or any beverage with that, I like to break off a small piece, chew it about once or twice, and then take a sip. So then the flavors are now opening up in my mouth. The wine is working its way around, kind of in like a gross, but visual, like a toilet bowl spinning. So now you're kind of getting everything together. And then it all goes down the hatch. Wow, I didn't really need an excuse to start drinking in the middle of the day. However, that is a delightful combination. The wine is dark, it feels rustic, it feels earthy, and it's really accentuating the earthy, grassy notes of the cheese. That is Bordeaux Ossau Iraty. Quick pairing, bring it to your friend's house. You'll get invited back. Another pairing that I saw was that you can, if you like beer, you can also do a brown ale. I like beer. I don't love brown ale. However, my local Trader Joe's had this beautiful St. Bernardus Christmas ale, and that was the closest thing I could find. Like I said, it's mid-November, so why not get a little festive? Same thing. Take your cheese, take a bite or two, swish it around with your tongue, maybe press it to the roof of your mouth, and then take a sip. Wow, I don't love this beer. I'm an IPA girl, but I can totally appreciate that because it's giving me that hazelnut taste that I mentioned earlier, and it's really bringing out the notes of cashew, the butteriness I think I'm getting, because this feels like brown ales are weird, kind of like a sweet tree bark vibe to them, like a maple syrup, but not that sweet. And it's really making the cheese kind of taste a little bit sweeter too, which, again, two completely different beverages, same cheese, and yet you're getting a different, no, totally different, but a complementary flavor profile because it's bringing out so many separate nuances of the cheese. Those are both really fine. I have to say I'm impressed by that. Also, shout out to this restaurant on this beer glass, Prohibition Pig. If you find yourself in the Waterbury, Vermont area, that is a dynamite place to eat. We love it and can't wait to go back. All right, so let's get into pairing with snacks, if you will. Here we have some fig and date crisps. Again, thanks to my friend Trader Joe. We have some classic prosciutto. We have an overripe pear because I bought it a week ago and thought I would film sooner. We have Bon Maman for red fruit jam. It is cherries, strawberries, raspberries, and red currants. And also here we have some Mike's Hot Honey, the classic, and a ginger kombucha to my friends who don't partake in alcohol. Totally great pairing there. So one of my favorite things to do with pairing, I always say there's like rules and things to think about, and I'll probably reference them in every episode, so no need to pay full attention. You can just have some fun. But what we want to think about are what grows together, goes together, and we want to find the friends and the lovers. There's also the fighters/haters, and that's just stuff that doesn't go well together at all. But we're not going to talk about that because we want to just highlight the cheese. So in this case, we'll start with a more classic pairing. I'm going to cut some more of this cheese. And actually, since I'm going to get sidetracked while cutting it anyway, if you are building a board, which I do sometimes for fun and for money, sometimes it can be really easy to get lost in what you want to do, or maybe that you don't know what kind of piece of cheese to buy, you don't know how to cut your cheese. If you have a beautiful, I'm also laughing because why is cutting the cheese always just such a funny joke? If you have a beautiful little wedge like this, you can cut them into these cute triangles. This allows you to either do kind of like a bow tie effect, or you can fan them out. Oh, this is a big piece, but you can fan them out like kind of in a sun ray, and it really just helps you elevate your board. And also, how easy was that? Not much cutting there, and now I have this adorable triangle that, well, now I'm gonna eat. So let's do a classic pairing. We'll do a piece of prosciutto. I didn't cut these because I love prosciutto, so the bigger the better in my opinion. Sidebar, I went to the fancy food show in 2024 and I was still newly pregnant and I should not have been eating any cured meats. However, once I was full with cheese, I feel like my map to the fancy food show is always cheese first, then candy. I have a crazy sweet tooth. And then after that, I just started going around all the guys who would cut me a piece of jamon off like the leg. So I figured I only had minimal room left in my stomach to eat. I might as well fill it with something I know I can't really get super authentically around. Yeah, I love a good cured meat. Anyway, okay, classic pairing. We have some prosciutto, also some pear, sliced ripe pear, and a little bit of jam. Let's see how we can make this not messy. I've got a slew of some knives over here. Let's cut this in halves. We have that. I'm also going to just cut this prosciutto because, well, they're going to watch me eat it, and I don't want to be that gross. Let's see. So we'll do a little bit of jam on the pear, cheese on that. And we'll just all go in. That is literally, I'm going to exaggerate here, love to exaggerate. I feel like I was just transported to the park right in front of the Eiffel Tower. That is a classic French picnic in one bite. Wow, that was great. Also, I think I'm pretty glad I left my pears out for a little bit. I can mash those all around my mouth. That's great. The sweet fruit really kind of tames the salt of the prosciutto, and then you're also getting the nuttiness that, like I said, this cheese leaves a little bit of an aftertaste. Nothing like low quality goat cheese logs. No shade. But you're getting a little bit of that aftertaste that's like a little bit nuttier, and the pear is super sweet. This is a very great classic combo. What a great idea. Huh. Where did I get this from? I'm not sure. But a great example of what grows together, goes together. I find that prosciutto tends to lean more like a French kind of meat. You could also use a Bayonne ham is really good as well. I could also see an apple instead of a pear if that's what you have on hand. And I also think that you can definitely do fig jam here too to bring out the sweetness. We are going to do a different combo with fig crackers. So I tried to, mix it up a little bit. In fact, I'm just going to wash that down with my French wine. Really set the scene here. All right. My next pairing is a more modern type of twist. And here we have some cheese. I'm also going to pop open this kombucha. Please pray it doesn't just explode over me now that I tried to get the cinnamon off the bottom. All right. Okay, so for our modern twist, Ossau Iraty, we are going to take our fig cracker. We are going to take our Ossau Iraty. Also, time out. I should have mentioned this earlier. If you notice, the inside of the cheese that is closer to the middle of the wheel is going to taste a lot milder than the cheese closest to the rind. This kind of rind, you absolutely can eat this. Some people choose not to, and that's okay. I always joke, I'm not going to take offense to it. I didn't make the cheese. But some people really enjoy the cheese rind because it's so much more flavorful. You're getting a lot more of said terroir. I personally love, I call it the Oreo sandwich of rinds. A little bit easier to do when you have like a soft brie or camembert, but I like to kind of break it so you have, this didn't really work as well as planned, but you have like a piece of your rind with a piece of your paste, and that way you can have a little bit of both. When I have a soft cheese, I do like the cupcake kind of sandwich with it, but now I've just gone ahead and made a mess. All right, modern twist pairing. Fig cracker, some hot honey, if you will. I probably should have let this sit upside down for a little bit, but here we are. We're just gonna do it. always a classic on a cheese board. I personally love using it. If you're making a board for someone, just let them know it's hot before you just deliver it. I have been there. All right, hot honey, fig cracker, cheese, and a sip of ginger kombucha. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right. Hey, that's almost like the Basque region meets Brooklyn. Very cool. That's really refreshing. I don't think I had enough honey on that bite because I'm finding that the kombucha is actually a little bit spicier than the honey itself, but it's still giving me, they're working together in the spice world. The sweetness from the cracker is really bringing out the sweetness of the cheese, but I think really the saltiness of the cheese itself is what's rubber banding this whole pairing together. Delightful. And some sparkle. I personally love a carbonated beverage with cheese in general, more so softer cheeses, but it kind of acts like a scrubbing bubbles in your mouth to really just, get in there and scrape everything away from your cheeks, your roof, your tongue, and just kind of, like I said, bring it all down the hatch at the end. That's delightful. I think if I had to choose my favorite, I would go with the classic pairing. To me, I'm a little bit obsessed with France, and just anything that feels like I can close my eyes and transport there is always a win for me. But I do enjoy finding beverages that are not alcoholic, that are easy to find. Now that I have a 1-year-old, convenience is a lot more important in my life. And while a honey hibiscus mocktail sounds delightful, I'm not going to A, make it, B, buy all the ingredients to use it once. So to be able to pair a really delightful cheese with something as easy as ginger kombucha, it's delightful and easy and something great for a Monday afternoon. Granted, I'm filming on a Friday, so I can drink everything here. That is fun. I'm not getting much citrus from this cheese, but the ginger from the kombucha is playing off the cheese really well. Kind of hiding the buttery a bit, but maybe I'm getting more yogurty, yeasty, toasted nut vibe with it. Like earth root flavors without it being earthy, if that makes sense. I'm excited to be doing this. This is my first episode back, so I might sound crazy now, but we're only going to get better from here, right? Thanks for coming along with me for this. This was a fun little pairing playground. If there's a pairing that you love with Ossau Iraty, please drop it in the comments below. I will definitely try it. I also find too, like, in France, you can have like a butter sandwich with, some ham and some cheese. And I feel like this would be a great cheese for that sandwich on a baguette. Classic, but classic without it being like cheddar classic. It's like a little fancy classic. Yeah, this cheese is fancy classic. I like that. I'm gonna bookmark that for myself. Like I mentioned before, if you ever find yourself panic shopping for cheese and wine in the holidays, just remember what grows together goes together. I kind of jumped all around here by drinking my drinks first, but maybe next time I will do this in order. Other red wines that are great with this cheese are tawny ports, Rhone Valley wines, and again, also Belgian duvels are really great with this. I think that's kind of what I was looking for. Came across the Christmas ale, also saw brown ale was good with this. I could also see a flavored cider being good with this. It'd be something a little not as tart as straight apple, but again, it's really great with a red fruit jam. So maybe like a cherry cider, passion fruit, pear, things of that nature too. I think that would be really, really delicious. Ginger kombucha, for example. I also wrote too, while I was having red wine with this cheese, I said a French picnic, but it's almost like, it's November. I just need like a plaid blanket, a baguette. It's really comforting. Fun fact about the cheese. It is called a farmer's dessert cheese. And basically at the end of a long day, they would have it with said tawny port at the end of a meal. And I found out when I did a cheese tour in Paris years ago, well before, I think I knew I liked cheese and wanted to do something, but didn't know what. and we did this really cool cheese tour. And I learned that cheese there is not always intended to be eaten with chocolate-covered pretzels on a board exploding with all the things. And it's at the end of a meal, and they just kind of bring it out. We had this one guy like roll out this cart to us and was like, all right, like choose your cheese, I'll slice it. And it's to fill you up after eating, because they are not eating massive, massive triple bacon cheeseburger portions. So it's like, if you're still a little hungry, just snack on some cheese at the end of your meal. At the end of a work day, they would have their dinner and then snack on Ossau Iraty with the port dessert wine. So this is okay to eat cheese for dessert, you guys, and this is the one to do it with, or at least start here and then, work your way into a whole collection of dessert cheeses. I love it. It's indulgent without being too rich. It's flavorful without being too intense. It's deeply rooted in history without any kind of final history exams. It's a really great cheese. So I hope the next time you see Ossau Iraty, you are no longer fearful of the name of it. You know it's gonna be a classic, whether you're just snacking on it like a mouse in the middle of the night, or your in-laws are coming over and you want to do something fun with it. It's really, really a great all-around cheese. So if you're craving something more than a tasting board, have no fear, because Ossau Iraty is so versatile in the kitchen as well. I know earlier I mentioned craving it with some tomato soup. You could also layer it on a grilled cheese. And one of the easiest ways to elevate your grilled cheese is to just put a little jam on it. Milk, bread, jam, cheese, butter, right in the pan. It's a great way of trying different pairings with it. I was just having this conversation with a couple at a cheese class I taught, and that's what I told them. I was like, if you don't know if a fruit is going to go well with it, find the jam version and then sample that. I guess you could also find the fruit and try it too, but I find that because jams are a little sweeter, most tend to go with different cheeses, and it's an easy entryway into trying that. You can also put this cheese on a salad, place it in some like on an arugula salad with some grilled chicken, some black peppercorn, little lemon and olive oil. That sounds mighty fine. You can also melt it over a croque monsieur, put that in there. Yeah, this cheese does it all. This is definitely something you want to keep in that drawer in your refrigerator. So, like I mentioned earlier, Ossau Iraty is le dessert du fermier, the farmer's dessert. Not because it's sweet, but because it's a comforting reward at the end of a hard day. It's simple, it's grounded, it's satisfying, the flavor equivalent of taking a big, deep breath. And like I said before, this cheese, they take a break when they make it. They say, hey, it's time to rest, and then we'll come anew. So we can all learn something from Ossau Iraty here. As someone who loves metaphors, this cheese, like I said, patience, it's hard work, it's good things come to those who wait, of people who still let time and terrain do a lot of the work. So tell me, like I said, however you would eat Ossau Iraty, drop it in the comments below. Would you go classic with a red fruit jam? Would you go a little modern with your hot honey and kombucha? Whatever you thought. Also, if there is a cheese you would like me to break down and discuss on a approachable level, definitely let me know. And as always, stay curious, stay cultured, and stay cheesy. Thank you so much for coming to listen to me talk about Ossau Iraty today. And I look forward to bringing you a lot more cheeses in the future.